Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Butler, and today I want to present to you my cause, or my case, or my argument for the need for Christian education in the African American community. Let's start off with a little scripture. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in the view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. I believe this is the purpose. This is the purpose of the church, and this is the purpose of Christian education. We must be different. We must be different. As Christians, we must be different than the world, because if not, people will see no need for the Christian education setting. Paul tells us right here in verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I believe that's the job of the teacher. I believe that's the job of the Christian education school, to transform the minds of our youth so they don't become like the world, but they can go out and change the world. They face a lot in the world, but they don't have to succumb to it if we give them the right tools to be able to handle what's going on in the world. And I believe the only true place that can be done is in a Christian education school. A little history. Christian education dates back to the early founding of America, when the Pilgrims and the Puritans came over on those boats to find the new world, or to get a new life, get freedom from the persecution that were going on in England. They came to the new world with the idea of education. So they started schools, set up schools where they taught those children in those settlements in the Massachusetts Bay, on Plymouth, to teach those kids how to read and write, to teach them Christian values, because they knew the value of education, but they knew the value of those kids knowing morals and things about Christ, reading the Bible, because they knew that's what they needed in order to succeed. Early school curriculum. In colonial America, education played a central role in society, and biblical teaching was central to all education. The first schools in America were started by the church for the main purpose of providing a Christian education. It started in America with Christian education. Many of the societal norms that we have today started with the early church in America. Christian values were, and I use that word very strongly, were strong in America. And someone may be asking, so what has happened to this world? The birth of public schools. That also happened in Massachusetts. The same place where the early church schools were founded also happened in Massachusetts. In 1837, the Massachusetts State Board of Education was formed. Horace Mann was its first secretary, and considered as one of the founders or the framers of public school education in America. He spent his time, that's a picture of Horace Mann right there. He spent his time forming the education system. It was so good that many other colonies, many other states used the Massachusetts State Board of Education as a model how to set up public schools throughout America. This formation did not do away with Christian schools or Christian education, because Christianity was still evident in the curriculum practices. All right, let's move. There was a move from religion to secular. The idea of separation of church and state took religion out of public school setting. Prayer, Bible reading, and the Ten Commandments were all taken out of the schools. You know, America, as they grew, the ideals of this country grew. You know, people changed. A lot of different people came into this world. And so, not just this world, to this country. So you have people from different countries coming in, immigrants with different ideas. And so therefore, everybody was not a Christian. Everybody did not want Christian values. So therefore, they felt that they shouldn't, as this is a free country, be required to live by Christian values or be taught Christian values in the public school setting. So, many Supreme Court cases came, really starting in the 1960s, but 1960s, with the idea of separation of church and state. Court cases where the court struck down the idea of prayer being in school, Bible reading, and Ten Commandments. All that was taken out of our schools. And so this may be the idea or the feeling that some of us have today. When God left, danger came in. Where is God? I can present a whole lot of statistics about the state of schools. I can present a whole lot of stuff about what's wrong with our schools based on violence and killing and school performance, but I'm not going to do that. But you can just kind of look at what's going on in the world and see something is missing. Something is missing in our schools, and I think the answer is God is missing. The need. There is a need for Christian schools. This little picture says, "Dear God, why do you allow so much violence in our schools?" And it says it's signed by a concerned student. And many of my students have that question today. Some of the students that I deal with want to know why is it so crazy, so much stuff going on. And here's God writing back, "Dear concerned student, I'm not allowed in schools." Signed God. God is not allowed in public schools, but the place where he is allowed is in Christian schools. That's where we need more of them in our society. Let me bring it home. As an African American, it's not that I focus more on African Americans, but it's just who I am. And I feel that my community needs Christian schools. There needs to be more schools in the African American community. There are still some Christian schools here in this area, but 99% of them are not in the African American community. And many of our children don't have an opportunity to take advantage of those schools for different reasons. But the church was the center of the African American community, and it still is today. The church founded schools, the church founded hospitals, colleges, and a lot of things that we have today became a big thing because of the church. And so Christian education was a major part of our life because they wanted their children to succeed. They wanted their children to be better than them. And education was not something everybody had the opportunity to. You know, through Jim Crow, through slavery, and all that different stuff, kept African Americans from having equal education. So there, now that we have it, it's something that we should value and take it not lightly, but take it as a privilege and an honor. Dr. Vernon Grant, the executive director and CEO of Cornerstone Schools in Birmingham, Alabama, made this quote in an article when he was interviewed by the Christian School Education magazine. He said, "There is a tremendous failure on the part of public education to serve the needs of urban minority children. The declining quality of all education, especially true for these children with significant needs. The Christian schools for these children are God's answer to their needs." We need in our community. We need it in our community. There is a need for the urban community to have a Christian education presence. So we may be saying, okay, you say we have a need for that, but what's different? What do they provide that a public school provides? Or what do they have that a public school don't have? They have many of the same things, same content, but with a God focus. You still learn reading, you still learn writing, you still learn science, math, ELA, all those different subjects are still taught in the Christian setting, but with a God focus. Same sports, you can play football, you can play basketball, you can run track, you can swim, you can do all that stuff, but with a God focus. Same clubs, drama, music, band, all that stuff happens in the Christian education setting, but with a God focus. So let's not focus on the differences, but let's see what we can do with what we have to bring God in all of that. All right. George Knight says that education is an important function in any society because all youth must pass through some type of educational experience before they are ready to take over the society's responsibility, not responsibility, but responsible position. So in order for them to take our place, for order for them to be teachers, in order for them to be new doctors, the new lawyers that take over when people retire, we have to make sure that they have everything that they need in order to take our place. If we don't prepare them, then there'll be nobody to take our place. The next generation has to be prepared to do what we're doing now and do it even better. And we believe that we, as Christian educators, can prepare them to go out and take our place. We don't have to worry about who's going to do it after we're gone. We know that we prepared somebody to take the place of us when we're no longer here, no longer able to work, or no longer able to do the things that we're doing now. The function of Christian education. A few bullet points here. To pass on the legacy of Christian truth, to provide a protected atmosphere, and to be the agency that helps young people from Christian homes meet Jesus Christ and surrender their lives to him. The world is in need of transformation, and Christian education has to be a part of that transformation. Knight states in his text, Christian education must be conservative and revolutionary. One function is to pass on Christian truth from one generation to the next. With all that is going on in our schools, safety and protection are constantly on the minds of the parents of these students. Every time you see a school shooting on the news, is my child safe? Is my child protected? Not just from those physical things, but is my child protected from those things of the world that's trying to come and take over their mind? And I believe that we can provide a safe and protected atmosphere where children can learn. Amen. So we have to make sure that we are promoting what God is. We are doing what God says. So Christian schools protect or shield their students from a lot of things public schools can't because of regulations. You can't pray, you can't lay hands on, you can't do any of the things that we might do in our church to pray and cover our children to make them feel better, because that's not allowed in public schools. And we make it our responsibility, or they make it their responsibility, that students have a real relationship with Christ. That's a part of the curriculum. That's a part of our walk with him, to make sure that they know him, know of him, and know of his things and want to be more like him. Christian schools, we're developing kingdom citizens. Christian schools develop Christians who will be able to relate well to others in this world, but even more important, Christian schools will educate students for citizenship in the kingdom of heaven. The classroom is a place where relationships are nurtured and cherished as a way to bring others closer to Christ. This is a very powerful statement. Relationships are very important. Students need to have a relationship with God first and with others. We have to prepare them to be able to deal with people who may not look like them or who have the same mindset. Christ dealt with all walks of people. Therefore, we must teach them that in order to be like Jesus, we must live like him, be like him, talk like him. And as teachers and people that work in the Christian education field, we must also foster relationships with these students. They must be able to see the goodness in Christ and God in us. A Christian education classroom should be a place where the love of Christ is overflowing. All right. And so you may be thinking, so if my child comes there, what will they learn? When you look at this, you see all of the areas of content that will be found in the public school there. History, mathematics, literature, science, computer science, engineering. All those stuff are added, but guess what? Look, all of it has a biblical perspective. All of it is coming around God. So this figure, it sets forth the integration model. The Bible, Christ is integrated in all of this. It's like a web that just go in and out, in and out, in and out. We can't do anything without him, and we don't leave him out of anything. So we must approach every subject in the light of the biblical perspective if we are to understand it to its full meaning. None of these things exist without God. A lot of people try to take God out of everything, but you can't, because he's the creator of all things. The broken lines in the figure signify that there are no hard or fast divisions between these various subjects. All this stuff goes together, just like all of it goes together with God. All right, so continue talking about our curriculum focus. The teaching of any topic, this is very important, in a Christian school is not a modification of the approach used in non-Christian schools. It is rather a radical reorientation of that topic within the philosophical framework of Christianity. And George Knight also made this quote. So that means we're not modifying. It's not a modified curriculum. We just giving a reorientation. We teaching it the way Christ would want us to teach it. We're teaching it the way that kingdom citizens need to learn it. So they won't be not as smart as somebody in the public school. They may even be smarter because we're teaching the curriculum just like it's supposed to be taught based on national standards. But God is just infused in everything that we teach. Some questions that someone in Christian education should ask themselves. What is the effect of this activity? Why are we doing this? Will it lead its participants to more sharing, to be more polite, to be helpful and generous to others? Will it lead them to be more self-centered or contentious? We want it to be this far. We want them to be more sharing. We want them to be more polite. We want them to be more helpful and generous to others. But we want to make sure that they're not self-centered and contentious. Knight makes this statement also in his text. He says, from the Christian perspective, teaching might be viewed as the art of loving God's children. We must love them enough to want to help them turn their hearts back to Him. Our teaching is God-focused, and everything we do must be attached to Him. So we have to ask these questions. Is God in this? We have to be very vigilant of what we say or do, and again, ask ourselves, is God in this activity? Is God in this lesson? Is God in this reading? Is God in this video? We must be different than the world, because if not, people will see no need. Again, I said they will see no need for the Christian education setting. And we started with some word, and we're going to end with the word. Matthew 28:18 and 20. It says, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them, that's the key word here, to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Christian education should also be revolutionary, preparing students to be agents for Christ. Not just agents, but change agents, going out and making a change in the world. The students should be prepared for evangelistic work. That doesn't mean they're going to be a traveling preacher, traveling evangelist, or even a missionary. However, they should be prepared to go out into the world and share what they know. Not just what they know about math, not what just they know about science or English, but what they know about God. Paul states in 1 Timothy 2 and 4 that God desires all to be saved and come to the knowledge of truth. Therefore, the young people who are educated in a Christian education setting must be prepared to help carry out God's plan. Do you think there's a need? I know there's a need. We have to prepare our children for what's to come. We don't know all that's coming, but we can have them prepared for what we know. And with God, He will help them prepare for what unknown. Bible talks about eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, neither they enter the hearts of men, the great things that God has prepared for them. So God has given us the tools in the Christian education system to make sure that your student is prepared. There is a need. So we need to get the funding. We need to get the students, get them in this setting where God is. Get them out of that place where God is not. We're not saying that people that work in these public schools are not Christians, because some of them are. But they don't have the leeway. They don't have the right. They don't have the privileges to promote God the way that He needs to be promoted in our schools. So there is a need. And I pray that you would want to let your children come. I pray that you would want to sow seeds. I pray that you would want to fund, even help build, place these schools in our communities, especially in our African American community. Our children in these urban communities, they need it. They need God. They need godly men and women in their lives to help them form their minds and transform them from the world and make them the agents that will go out and help win this world for Christ. Thank you for listening to my presentation today, and I pray that in your hearts it's been pricked to know the need for Christian